Jimmy Butler, he's a very interesting player to me.
He's like, oh shoot, I don't know where to go with the ball because I haven't been able to think.
It was a great series. Game 4 was one of the best games I've ever watched in my entire life. Now LeBron's a 4-time champion, and Anthony Davis gets his first.
It's unacceptable. So happy when the Astros lost because it would definitely be a 2020 thing.
Yeah, I was impressed by their game. Braden Point, Andre Palat, Nikita Kucherov. That was the best line in the playoffs, no doubt.
Stay undefeated when they face the mighty Cowboys with Garrett Gilbert.
Hey everyone, I'm Jared Sandler, and you're listening to Outsiders Opinions.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NFL Opinions of the Week. I'm Kevin, and I am joined by the man as we look through this haze looking for an answer for Cleveland. And let's talk about Joe Flacco. He is announced a starter, Austin.
Yeah, he has been, and the Cleveland defense has been so good this season. They've kept them in the playoff race. But is Joe Flacco what they need to be a playoff contender? Because when you have a good defense, or a great defense, I should say, what you need at the QB position is lowered to win a Super Bowl. We've seen Jimmy G lead the 49ers to a Super Bowl appearance that they should have won if he made that pass to Emmanuel Sanders. And do you think if Joe Flacco not necessarily returns to his prime, but returns to a serviceable starter for the rest of the year and into the playoffs, that they are a playoff contender?
Yeah, and I think I'm not sure if they can win the Super Bowl because I think you will have to make those moments. But yeah, Joe Flacco, to me, when you have a great defense, the key thing is turnovers. Don't turn over the ball and put your defense in bad situations. And Cleveland clearly has a good run game. And they have great offensive mind. So I think Joe Flacco could work. I'm just like, oh my gosh, Joe Flacco's still in the league. And I was like, was he with the Jets last year? Did he take time off? He was with the Jets last year.
And he played extremely well.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really remember. But yeah, no, it makes sense given all their issues. And he's a veteran presence. He's a guy that's done this a while. Now, is he a top-tier QB? No, but I think if you just have a starter that doesn't turn over the ball with a great defense, you should be great.
Yeah, and you could win Super Bowls like that. That is not out of contention here with how good their defense has been playing, especially when they had the third most rushing yards this year as a team. Third most, which is very, very impressive. They have the most attempts, but third most rushing yards. So the yards per attempt are still very good. It's fine at 4.2 yards per attempt rushing, but that's still very good over an entire team. And that can push you over the top when you have a great defense. You don't really need Joe Flacco to be that guy. Joe Flacco had a 263 yards per game when he was with the Jets. In his 4 games started, he threw for 5 touchdowns and 3 picks. And during his prime with the Ravens, in his best season, which most say are 2012, he didn't throw any picks during that playoff run. That's when people thought, oh, is Joe Flacco elite? He had 11 touchdowns, which is the most in the playoffs ever in a playoff year. At least when that happened. And 0 picks. And that's what you need. Over a 4-game stretch, 11 touchdowns, 0 picks, you can win a Super Bowl like that. And if he can just avoid the interceptions, play serviceable, I think that they're a true contender because of how good their defense has played. We obviously need to see if Joe Flacco is as good, but the defense has allowed the least amount of passing yards against in the entire NFL. They have allowed at least the least amount of yards against in the entire NFL. I don't know what to say. Their defense has been absolutely remarkable. Let me put it this way. They've only allowed 10 passing touchdowns against the entire year. 10. That's remarkable. And that includes, they played against the 49ers and won. They played against the Ravens and won. They played
sorry.
You go.
I was saying with quarterbacks that didn't. But I think they're with not as experienced quarterbacks as Joe Flacco.
Yeah, that's a great point. They're 1-1 with PJ Walker, 1-2 with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and with those guys, I mean, only throwing 1 touchdown combined over those 5 games they've started, which they're 2-3 in, they've thrown 2 touchdowns and 9 picks combined over that 5-game stretch. And if Joe Flacco can just be 1 touchdown, 1 pick every game, I think they have a serious chance of winning it. Or not necessarily winning a Super Bowl with if he's playing like that, because that's not necessarily even okay. But it definitely is much better than what they've been receiving from other quarterbacks. And I do think that with the defense is good, and with the 3rd best rushing attack in the league, the best passing defense, the best yards defense in the league, I don't see how they're not at least a contender, especially when they've beaten teams like the Ravens. They've beaten, I know the Steelers aren't the greatest team of all time, but they beat the Steelers. They've also beat the 49ers. They beat the Colts, who are still in playoff contention at 6-5. They've beaten playoff level teams, and that is nothing to scoff at.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, and they could go on a run. I'm just gonna say they have the potential for danger in the playoffs, but I'm gonna say I kind of want to push back. They need someone to be like a superhero or the leader on that defense, which could be Myles Garrett, because the last time you had a quarterback that really just relied on his defense and won the Super Bowl, I'm going to say that's Denver with Peyton Manning.
Yes, and you could also really say that Jimmy G in 2020, because they should have, or I guess 2019 season, but they really should have won that. They were up by 11 in the 4th quarter, and they missed Emmanuel Sanders on a wide open that most QBs should be able to make that pass. And I that game was so close. So I do think there's still a possibility there. And here's the thing: who is really the number 1 option in the NFL right now, or in the AFC? Is it the Dolphins? Because the Dolphins have yet to beat anyone with a above 500 record. They've beaten the Ravens already in Baltimore. By the way, in Baltimore they beat the Ravens with not a good QB situation, because whatever his name has got hurt. Deshaun Watson got hurt during that game. Okay. They beat the Steelers. The Chiefs have really struggled on offense this year, and with how good the Browns' defense has been, I could see them beating the Chiefs in the game if their defense performs, because the Chiefs' offense, you can't say, has been as proficient as you'd like it to be. And with the best defense in the league, the one who's allowed the least amount of passing yards, especially with all the drops we've seen from the Chiefs, I don't know if they're able to overcome that. The only team I'm looking at that I think could beat them is I think there's a team that could beat them, but that I would be more worried about is the Jaguars. But the Jaguars have still struggled against some good teams like the 49ers. But also the Jaguars have beaten the Steelers, who are a playoff team. They've beaten the Texans, who are good. They've beaten the Colts, twice, who are good. But they've lost to some good teams like the Chiefs. They lost to the 49ers. So I think there really is a gap in the AFC. I don't know who that top dog is. And I could see a defensive run, great coached. I have to really give praise to Kevin Stefanski for being 7-4 at this point of the year, with 5 games started from those guys that I mentioned that were really, really bad, or played really, really bad. I think coaching has been amazing, and the AFC seems a little bit more wide open than I thought. I mean, the Bills play the Chiefs next, and then the Cowboys, and end the year off with the Dolphins. I don't think the Bills make the playoffs. So who really is that top dog in the AFC? And I'm going to say, why not for the Browns if Joe Flacco plays at a average starter QB, 16th in the league, just average, or just around like 20 to 14, just average, plays okay. I don't see why they couldn't.
Yes, I think I will agree with you. Like, yeah, I could see it happening. My thing is, like, with the quarterback, like you talk about Jimmy G, and he missed that pass. To me, the Super Bowl and the playoffs are where this is where you can see the differences with quarterbacks, and it's not even an inch of a difference between the quarterbacks. But I think it could happen like we saw with Denver, and it could be one of those years. I agree the AFC is different. The thing is, I think you need to see Myles Garrett or someone on that defense, or maybe someone on offense that's not the quarterback. Because I agree, if Joe Flacco is playing average, and to me, average QB is, he's not losing me a game, but he's also not winning the game for me.
Yes, that's what I mean. He's making plays, but he's also making some bad plays. He's also making some great plays, but he's also making some average plays. It's just around the mean. He's playing fine. He's not the reason why you lose.
Yes. And he's not the reason. And
It's
to me,
why
he's
you
not the
win.
reason you win.
Yeah.
Who's the guy who is the reason they win?
Well,
That's the guy I
Miles
think
Garrett.
you need.
Well, I don't think you necessarily need a guy when you have a defense, though, because like while Von Miller, you also need Aqib Talib. You also need Chris Harris Jr. You also need those guys who are making. You need DeMarcus Ware. Like you need some of the really, really good defensive players you have on that team to make sure that you get over the edge. One defensive player isn't enough.
Yeah, I'm gonna flip it because we're talking like we've talked about offenses and like offenses in the past years. At one, you need a great wide receiver. You need a great offensive line or a good offensive line, like you're talking about defense. But I think to me, there's got to be that guy that makes in that big moment who makes that big play. Because like with Von Miller in the Super Bowl,
It would be Myles Garrett. I mean, they also have Zadarius Smith, who's a 3-time Pro Bowler. Was a Pro Bowler last year with Minnesota, and now he's on Cleveland. He's on the other defensive end side. So they have 2 last year Pro Bowlers. They have Shelby Harris, I think, is a very underrated D tackle who's had 6. He was on Denver the year after they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it seems like he's been here for a while. Yeah, it seems like they have great. Like
they have
really
Denzel Ward, who's a very talented corner. They have Greg Newsome, who's a good rookie. Or not, no, he's not the rookie. Greg Newsome's been good, though. He scored the big touchdown. You talk about big play. He caught the pick 6 that tied the game against the Ravens, and their defense made a play. Or the defense got a stop, I should say. He caught the pick 6 that tied the game. The defense got a stop. The offense got him in field goal range, and they won the game. So I think they have enough players on this team that Grant Delpit's the rookie. That's right. No, he's not. I'm just
no.
idiot.
He's like year 3, but he's a young guy, so he's not getting paid probably what he's on a nice salary. Because I want to say he was like a 2nd-round pick.
Yeah, something like that. But they have a lot of talented guys on their team, and I am really impressed. Their next game's against the Rams. I need to see how they play against Jacksonville on December 10th. If they can win that game against Jacksonville, even though it's in Cleveland, like that's a huge game. But then at the end of the year, they're playing scrubs. Like your last 2 games are I don't want to say necessarily scrubs, but they're playing the Jets and the Bengals. And the Bengals don't have a QB, and the Jets don't have a QB. They should win those games easily. Easily. Next week they play the Rams. I still think they should win that game relatively easily. I don't think the Rams are that good. Especially with how good the defense has been playing for Cleveland. But then they also have a game against the Bears, which should be easy. But then they play a game against Jacksonville on December 10th. And December 24th, they play the Texans. Those 2 games would be huge. I could seriously see them winning out, especially if they win that game against Jacksonville, and finishing at 13-4. And that would probably have them as the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Yeah, it puts them in contention. And I think, like, I agree, like scrubs or just teams that you are not on the same level with, you're better than for different reasons, like you mentioned. To me, that's what separates the playoff teams and the teams that can go far in the playoffs. So I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm saying it's unlikely because, like, as we talked about in like our video in a previous video, there's so much there's so much more linked to an offense. So having that offense, to me, you're playing at a disadvantage with the defense, but you have to play greater. What do you think?
Nick Foles is what I think. Could we see a Nick Foles with the Eagles in a Joe Flacco situation? Could we see it? Joe Flacco has been a big-time performer before his career, just like Nick Foles was a Pro Bowler back in 2013, had the best touchdown-to-interception ratio ever at that point. And then Brady obviously broke it because he's the GOAT. But Nick Foles, could we see that? Because that Eagles team had a great defense. Yes. And they had a great offensive line, which the Browns do. I know they've had some injuries on the offensive line, but the Browns' offensive line is really good. And I mean, there is I'm going to say that it's maybe not likely. I'm not going to say it's 100% chance, but I'm definitely not saying there's no chance. I could definitely see it. I see the vision. Like, I see it. Okay. I could see it.
You see the storyline. You see
yes.
the could-be script.
And
which
logically, it checks out. Like it may not be the most likely thing that happens, but it's definitely not impossible. Like I'm not speaking this into existence necessarily. Like it's not something that has to happen, but I see it. What were you gonna add?
Yeah, and talking about Nick Foles, to me, Nick Foles was better than average when the Eagles won that Super Bowl. Like he made some key throws.
That's true. That's true. But the defense really was for. I guess not in the Super Bowl because they allowed Brady to have the most yards ever in a Super Bowl, and besides the one defensive play they made, which I mean, you eventually have to make one stop on defense because they made like no stops the entire game, but. I'm just saying that a backup coming in with a stellar defense on a team that could be a 1 seed, I could see the Browns getting the 1 seed if they went out. If they went out, I think they will get the 1 seed because I think the Ravens lose at least one more game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know the Chiefs.
They would have
this.
So
are they at 3 losses or are they 4?
They're at 3, but they could lose one more game. Like I don't think that's
one more game. Yeah,
I definitely don't think it's impossible.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying it's impossible for the Browns, but I'm going to say it's unlikely. However, like I can see it. I think you're a little bit more enthusiastic. I'm a little bit more skeptical on this. I'm skeptical of it happening because like, okay, can the defense carry the load consistently while the offense does not make mistakes?
Here's the problem. The schedule for the Chiefs is easy. They play the Packers, who are 5-6, the Bills, who are 6-6, the Patriots, who are horrible. I don't even want to check the record.
Yep.
Raiders, Bengals, Chargers. But that's at Chargers. I could see the Chargers for some reason winning that game at the end of the year. I could see it. That would be so.
It could happen. Yeah,
I could see it. I could also see the Bills have to be in so desperation mode at this point of the season. Again, I could see them winning that game because they have to be so desperate. Like this is it. This is it. If the Bills miss the playoffs this year, Josh Allen will not be in my top 5 QBs next year. He may not even be in my top 8.
I don't know if he's even in my top 5 this year. That's gonna be difficult to figure out.
Next year's QB rankings, because of all the injuries and everything that's happening, will be our hardest to do. It'll be our 3rd iteration of it, and it'll be one of our hardest.
Yeah. But yeah, the Browns could do it. I don't want to poo-poo all the Browns love because I know they want
one more thing. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. The Eagles have never won a Super Bowl before. They never won a Super Bowl. That was their first Super Bowl win, and that would be the Browns' first Super Bowl win. I'm just saying that the comparisons there would be insane. They'd be insane.
It would be insane if Joe Flacco went on it, and that would be curious on like what is his career viewed as, because that would be his 2nd Super Bowl win. You already know 2 Super Bowl wins is rarefied air.
And here's the thing, he already has a Super Bowl MVP. Like, if he were to have a Nick Foles performance, win Super Bowl MVP, he'd be a 2-time Super Bowl MVP, 2-time champion.
That would be crazy. Because then you get into other stuff. But yeah, the Browns, to me, it's just what does the defense do? Because to me, defenses are a disadvantage because it's a very offensive-heavy league. So I think you need defensive players. But like you said, the defense has made those plays in key games.
Yeah. One more thing I need to mention. What happens with let's just say they win it for some reason. I know I'm a psychopath, but
what happens if they just get to a divisional round game?
Let's say they make it to the AFC Championship. Let's say that. I want to be drastic. I want to be a little bit crazy here.
Okay.
What happens with Deshaun Watson? If they win a Super Bowl, let's at least look at the Super Bowl. If they win a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, there's no way he's not the starter next season. I can't see a world without it. It's just, maybe you go back to Deshaun because you paid him infinite money, but winning a Super Bowl with a QB kind of ties you at the hip, right?
Well, yeah, but it'd be going back to the Eagles. Like Nick Foles just got a different. He got paid by the Jaguars, so maybe a team does that.
He's only 38. Flacco's 38. He'll be 39 next year. That's not unheard of for a QB. Does someone say if he wins the Super Bowl, does he go somewhere else and try to? And we get another chance at starting. That would be such a crazy resurgence to see at 38 that he comes in, wins the Super Bowl. His birthday's in January, so he'd actually win it in at 39. Man,
Yeah, I think because like I think you can make the argument like why stick with Deshaun Watson, and I think the thing is
especially with all the off the field issues.
yeah, off the field injuries, and I think they've shackled themselves to Deshaun Watson,
I'm going to say
and
it
I
right
think
now.
he's their quarterback.
Even though they'd probably get nothing for it, even though they'd probably have to keep salary, if they win a Super Bowl, I'll say it now so you can put it in an intro later.
Okay,
If the Browns win a Super Bowl, Deshaun Watson is not in Cleveland anymore. He's gone. I can't see. How do you bring him back? How do you convince the fan base to bring him back after all the off the field issues, all the injuries, all the extra stuff that you don't need, and you win a Super Bowl with somebody else? I don't. What argument is there? What
I
is the
think
argument
you have the
besides
financial
that you
argument.
that's but
Like people don't even like owners don't even recognize that contract because they're like, yeah, don't ever do that again. Like that was the thing with Lamar Jackson. Okay, I want Deshaun Watson contract. No, that contract does not exist. That is a they've I think shackled themselves to it. So because I think you can make the argument like, is Deshaun Watson even good? Like at
I mean
all?
they're 5-1 with him as a starter. He's definitely better than their other QB options have been. But in the situation where even if Joe Flacco's average and plays average and wins a Super Bowl, just plays average and wins a Super Bowl, I still don't know how he's not the starter. I still don't know. Because of all the off the field issues and the injury issues, consistent injury issues, consistent off the field issues. It's too much. It's just too much. You don't need that in an organization.
It was too much when they traded for him. Like the off the field issues were there.
I know.
And they
You're
still
right.
made the deal. And they still gave him that ridiculous contract. So I think yeah.
Based on what I said, do you agree? Is Deshaun Watson still in Cleveland? If they win a Super Bowl, let's assume that happens.
If they win the Super Bowl, I'm just going to tell you, like, logically, yes, that makes sense. But I can't see it happening. I can't see them.
So your prediction is that they win the Super Bowl. Given that, you think that Deshaun Watson Week 1 of 2024 is starting?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Because like I can't see how.
But you won a Super Bowl.
I know, but like the thing is how, like it's like the deal's terrible. They gave up so much for him, like just not even like financially or anything. Just I can't think of the word.
Yeah,
just socially making that deal with all the other news. Like, I don't know how you can't, which is terrible. Like, to me, if he was on like a 1 year, 2 year deal, like I'd be questioning. I'm like, are they going to bring him back? But since he's on that big deal, I'm like, well, yeah, I guess he's going to be back because that. But yeah, I'm very intrigued with the Joe Flacco situation and like defense because it'd be great if a defense really propels a team to a Super Bowl win.
Yeah, and this video's going longer than I even thought, but I have another thing. I want to go into really quickly. In the world where the Texans make the playoffs and the Browns finish 13-4 and get the 1 seed, I don't know how Kevin Stefanski's not coach of the year. He's had 4 different starting quarterbacks. 4 different starting quarterbacks in what the 1 seed. I after missing the playoffs, I don't. It would be so hard between D'Amico Ryans and Kevin Stefanski. Like I would be, or D'Amico Ryan. I'd be so hard for me to decide. So hard.
It would be difficult
because D'Amico Ryans has been such a good head coach. Such a good head coach. Right now, he's definitely coach of the year. At the moment, he's coach of the year. But D'Amico Ryans, I don't know if he's done as much. Like, if they just get the 7 seed, right? Is that enough to beat Kevin Stefanski with 4 different? I don't know. Well,
that's
who do you vote
because
for?
Because the Texans have a great QB in Stroud this year. Stefanski has had 4 different quarterbacks, so that kind of goes more into the coaching of adapting to your personnel versus D'Amico Ryans having great personnel. Like, I'm not trying to diminish D'Amico Ryans. I'm just saying you can see the level of coaching intensity needed for the situation if the Browns were to get the 1 seed versus the Texans, where they have the personnel and they have a guy leading them on the right track, but there hasn't been too much quarterback turnover versus Stefanski if they were to get the 1 seed and have they've had 4 different quarterbacks.
I have another liner here.
Mhm.
On December 24th, on Christmas Eve, there's a game in Houston between the Cleveland Browns and the Houston Texans. That game is for Coach of the Year.
Ooh, I like that.
So that's a Christmas Eve game for Coach of the Year. That is another prediction there. Especially if the Browns continue winning games. If they're like on a track to go 13-4 and the Texans are on track to make the playoffs, that game is for Coach of the Year. If the Texans win that game, D'Amico Ryans is Coach of the Year. If the Browns win that game, Kevin Stefanski's Coach of the Year.
All right, I like that, and I think that's a good place to end. I was surprised we were getting short with the NFL, but yeah, no, we went on our tangents. It's an outsider's opinion staple. I enjoyed it. I'm shocked we went this far, but yeah, it's a really intriguing question, and I will definitely keep up with it. That's all I got. Thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions.